Everyone, so today we are going to talk about the learner, so knowing your learner, teaching young and adult learners. But first of all, let's define young learners. Young learners are students who are 4 to 19 years old. The age group varies country per country, okay? Then mature learners, these are adult learners who are usually 20 years old and above. So factors to consider when teaching young and adult learners. First, prior subject knowledge, usually their English level. So later we will discuss more of like how to know their level based on CEFR, which is Common European Framework of References for Languages. And second, diversity. Third, learning styles and preferences. Four, motivation, which is the heart of this presentation. Then we have classroom rewards and phrases which are forms of incentive. One of the most interesting and I think one of the most important theories and when we talk about education is Vygotsky's proximal zone of development. So Vygotsky believed that certain skills or understanding that students have mastered completely. So while the others are in the verge of mastering, others are beyond their present capacity to accommodate new things. So what does this theory of Vygotsky implies when we talk about education? So it means that when we make instructions or when we have our lesson topic or when we do our lesson plan, we have to see to it that the skills that learner are new things. Yeah, that's something that they haven't actually mastered completely, that they are in the process of mastering. Okay, so if we want to actually maximize the potential learning of our students, so we have to teach them something that they haven't completely mastered, but that is not so difficult for them to gauge. So it means that it's like one level ahead of them. Okay, so for example, we have the escalating difficulty. So first we introduce auxiliary verbs, then second we can actually introduce some regular verbs, then we introduce irregular verbs, then verbs that become gerund by VING, so escalating mode of difficulty, okay? Something that they're in the process of learning, yeah. And this is very important when it comes to teaching, so you can motivate or catch the attention of your learner, be it a young learner or a mature learner. When we talk about student learning levels under CEFR, so we have A1, which is beginner, A2, which is upper beginner, B1, which is intermediate, and we have upper intermediate B2, then we have advanced C1 and C2. It's very important for you to actually understand that you have to actually understand the level of the students, not the age of the students, because sometimes the age doesn't actually correspond with the level of the students, because some students could actually have more exposure to English or actually been raised in a multilingual environment or actually had prior assistance from academy tutor or like summer camps and stuff like this or cram school. Yeah. So it's very important to actually factor in the level of English and their age at the same time. So actually to tailor your lesson plan or your topic better. Yeah. So we have the Common European Framework of References for Languages. This this aim to actually have a standard or to standardize the levels of language exam in different regions. Yeah. So usually it's very common to have this one. We have beginner, which is A1 level breakthrough, a basic ability to communicate and exchange information in a simple way. So for example, they could actually say, understand greetings, hi, good morning, good afternoon, sit down, stand up, alphabet, phonetics, yeah, basic phrases, yeah, then So you have to, as a teacher, if your student is A1, it means you have to speak slowly. You do TPR, total physical response, and communicative language teaching. Yeah, so you show them how the phrases is, and it's actually very important when we're teaching A1 or beginner to be able to demonstrate, yeah, using TPR, the basic phrases, and repetition is very important at this stage, and also proper enunciation or pronunciation is also a key. Then we have upper beginner A2 level. We have the way stage elementary. Yeah, so this one. So what does it mean? So with this wage stage, an ability to deal with simple, straightforward information and begin to express oneself in familiar contexts. So they could actually do written conversation. So it means for students, you can ask basic questions. So what's your father's name? Where do you live? What's your father's job? Yeah, or how much is this? So these are the words or vocabulary that an A2 level student um, could actually understand. So it means if you're actually teaching A1 students, yeah, so you would not actually present words or vocabularies that more of like for A2 or for B1 students. So you have to tailor your activities, tailor your topics to the level of your students, okay? So familiar context, yeah. So this one, very simple conversation. Then we have the intermediate B1 level threshold. So the ability to express oneself in a limited way in a familiar situations and to deal in a general way with non-routine information. So, for example, the students on this level, they were able to open a bank. Yeah, they're able to fill up forms in a bank. So, for example, their personal account, their number, telephone number, stuff like this. Then they could also have no problems traveling to other countries because they were able to actually know some keywords like where's the bathroom, how do you go to this place, what train station or platform, and stuff like that. So they can able to actually tell about their hopes or dreams in the future with, of course, still limited vocabulary. So it means that when you're intermediate B1 students, you will not actually giving them vocabularies for A2. It's better for the intermediate B1 level to learn vocabularies like more B2, but like few words, okay? Or 5 words or 6 or 7 vocabularies, yeah. And expressions per day could be enough so they could improve their language or yeah, their vocabulary bank. So we have intermediate B2 level. So some countries, when I was in Latin America, they actually require teacher to have at least B2 level of English to be able to teach elementary and high school students. So when we say B2, it means at least you could actually converse, express oneself in a range of topics. You're able to actually talk with native speakers and you could talk about abstract idea. So you could be very spontaneous and you can produce detailed text on a wide variety of subjects. So you can talk maybe about politics, yeah, and also you can talk about environmental issues, stuff like this, because you have enough vocabulary, yeah. So in this stage of learning or level, you have to actually introduce students little by little, teach them about how to make their own speech, yeah, what to guide them for impromptu speech, also a little bit, so they could have some practice. Because when we say it should be a little bit more difficult than their current level of English. So this one could be good enhancement program for them or an activity for students under B2 to prepare like impromptu speech or do some role play, dramatizations, yeah, which is our student centered, or to do mock job interview could be a very good activity as well. Then we have C1 level effective operational proficiency, the ability to communicate with the emphasis on how well it is done in terms of appropriateness, sensitivity, and the capacity to deal with unfamiliar topics. Example can deal with some hostile questioning confidently. So, for example, debate, doing a really full-blown debate. Okay, what else could you activity for C1? You could also have topics whether they agree or disagree. They can actually write some essays at this stage, which are very good, and vocabularies that they could actually talk about unfamiliar topics. Even, for example, they could talk about their idea of coronavirus in a more engaging way. Yeah. Then we have the C2 level mastery. So the capacity to deal with material which is academic or cognitively demanding and to use language to good effect at a level of performance which may, in certain respects, be more advanced than that of an average native speaker. So in C2 or C1 usually these are the students who can actually do more research, yeah, or academic, can do some academic jargons, yeah, can actually read between the lines. They could also understand more metaphors, yeah, or sarcasm to some degree, yeah. So what is important about learning the level is actually when you learn the level of the students, you know what lesson plans and activities you could actually give them. So if they are A1 students, you could actually give a little bit more of A2 activities and so on and so forth, and also try to make the it more of like a total physical response and CLT, and also try to let them know like more functional grammar and functional purpose of the language. Yeah. Then what else? Now let's talk about diversity. So we have different issues here. We have family background, cultural background, religion, socioeconomic, and differently abled as form of diversity. When we talk about diversity, if you're a language teacher and you move to another country, of course the background, the way of living is quite very different of the country that you're actually raised and born. So, for example, in when I was teaching in Japan, it's not really good to actually ask about family background or to fill out students of family tree. Yeah, when I was in Ecuador, I had problems like half of students coming to me because they actually don't know how to actually do the family tree because they didn't know who their parents were and the side of their mother or their father. So just to avoid this kind of conflict, and then try not to ask personal information, especially in countries that are more conservative. Yeah. Then we have cultural background. It's also very important to know the cultural background so you can actually learn skills on how to actually teach them certain vocabularies and to learn their actual learning style, yeah, of the teacher and this cultural background. For example, in Japan, where students are more like quiet and they're not very homogeneous culture. Of course, there are some mixed marriages. So some Japanese students are like have Brazilian mother, American mother or father, yeah, and Japanese mother or father. So in the end, like cultural background could affect to some extent in the countries that are very heterogeneous. So you would know, for example, some words in Spain and Spanish words could be very similar to how you conjugate some verbs in English. You could use that methodology to actually introduce new vocabulary, or, for example, cultural background. Also, you would know about pronunciation difficulties. Most Japanese students have problems enunciating R and L. Also, Korean students and Chinese students. Then students in Latin American Spanish-speaking countries, they have also problems with H sounds or enunciation. So knowing the cultural background and using them to motivate learning or to make learning easier is much better. Then we have religion. So religion. So some countries like Japan, they don't